How can I become a better shooter? Hello and welcome to You Asked, our short form podcast where we take 5 to 10 minutes or so and answer a question that you have submitted. Today's question, how can I become a better shooter, is one that I know a lot of people struggle with, and I'm excited to share with you 5 tips that I think can help you become a better shooter. But before we get into this little episode, I want to remind you of our Lux LUT pack. We have partnered with Gamut.io. They do an incredible job with everything when it comes to LUTs and color and making your films look a certain way. And we have a beautiful LUT that you can check out over at howtofilmweddings.com/LUTs. That's howtofilmweddings.com/LUTS. And if you want that luxury looking high-end kind of film emulsion look, we definitely recommend checking out this LUT pack. Okay, so let's dig into this question. How can I become a better shooter? Now, the very first thing that you need to nail down is going to be the basics. And I'm going to get into what some of the basic things are in my mind, and then we will get to some more advanced stuff. But whenever you get the basics down, and some of these might take a little bit of time, some of them might take not very much time at all. It just kind of depends on how you work and how you are as a filmmaker. Get the basics down first, and then move on to more intermediate, more difficult type of shooting styles. So the first thing that I think that you should look into and figure out is understanding your camera settings. And there's a couple of things in here. One is going to be understanding your frame rates. What is the difference between 24 frames per second or 60 frames per second? Do you know the difference between those and when you should use them and when you shouldn't use them? If you are wanting to put anything in slow motion, you should be shooting in 60 frames per second. If it is something that is absolutely not going to be in slow motion, something like your ceremony or your toasts or first look, things that are going to be more of the live event, you should really consider putting those in 24 frames per second. Now you can shoot everything in 60 and then put it in a 24 frames per second timeline. That is going to knock out some of those frames so it'll look a little bit more like 24, but understanding and knowing when you should be shooting in 24 frames per second or 60 frames per second. Next thing with that and understanding camera settings is figuring out how to manually control your camera. If you are a person that is still shooting on auto everything, I would figure out and learn how the exposure triangle works and knowing the differences in how those things work. So you have the exposure triangle, you have the f-stop, also known as the aperture, you have the shutter speed, and you have the ISO. And all of these three things are going to work together to help you expose your image properly. So if you are shooting on something like aperture priority or just full auto or something like that, look into and begin to understand how your manual control is going to help. When it comes to f-stop or aperture, if you have the lower the number, then that means you're going to have a shallow depth of field, which means only a small sliver of your image is actually going to be in focus. Whereas if your aperture, your f-stop is at like 5, a lot more of your image is going to be in focus. So that's what that does. Shutter deals with motion blur. The lower that your shutter number is, so if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, if you're at 50, your shutter should always be double your frame rate whenever you can do it that way. That's going to introduce more motion blur. The higher your shutter, that's where there isn't going to be motion blur. And then there is ISO, and this is going to brighten up your image. The exposure triangle deals with the light that is given and how your camera interprets it. And so you need to know and understand how these three things work together and how they are going to help you expose your image. And then a part of the manual control is learning and understanding Kelvin. Now, I'm a big proponent of Kelvin, and I think that you should know how it works. Basically, your camera inverts what is going on. And so if you go outside and the sunlight is actually very cool sunlight, you might turn your Kelvin up to 6,500 or something like that, which is actually going to make your image a little bit more orange to offset the white blue light of the sun. Or if you go into a reception space, you're going to drop your Kelvin down to around 3200 or something like that, because dark reception spaces are typically a little bit more orange. And so you're going to cool them down to offset it. Knowing and understanding Kelvin is going to help you be a better shooter. The next tip to help you become a better shooter is changing your eye level. Whenever I first started, I am a 6 foot tall man. And so I was often shooting down at a lot of my subjects because I am so tall. So what you need to get in the habit of doing, no matter how tall you are, is adjusting and changing your eye level of your camera. So if you are taller, you're typically going to be shooting down. If you are shorter, you're typically going to be shooting up. So you need to adjust the eye level of your camera so that it makes your footage a little bit more interesting and it makes it a little bit more dynamic, and it is going to change how people view it. If you are often looking at the exact same eye level the entire film, it can make it a little bit stale and a little bit boring. Along the same lines of changing the eye level, also adjust or change your focal lengths of your lenses. Now, if you are on a zoom lens, this is going to be a lot easier for you to do. Like if you're shooting on a 24-70, all you need to do is just turn the zoom on your lens so that you can shoot wide at 24, 50, so it's a little bit tight, and then 70 even tighter. Changing that is going to cause the feel of the image to be different. Now, if you are shooting on a prime lens and most of the day you are shooting on that one prime lens, use your feet. Don't shoot from the same distance. Even if it's a 50, if you want to get something really wide, back way up. Talk to the people that you want to work with. If you want to get something a little bit tighter, go in and use your feet. That is why prime lenses are called feet zooms, because you have to move yourself to get those different focal lengths. So if you're shooting on a prime, move your feet. Don't shoot at the same distance everywhere that you go. And if you are using those zooms, make sure that you are constantly changing your focal range. Don't shoot everything at 24 or everything at 35 or everything at 70. Move those in and out and change it so that that can be a lot more interesting. Like the eye level, if you are shooting the entire wedding or the entire day on the same focal length, then that is going to make it a lot less interesting. The next tip I want to share to help make you a better shooter is to not take what you are given. Yes, sometimes you have to, you don't have a choice. But if you don't like how a shot is set up, or you don't like where the bride is standing or where the groom is getting ready, or a particular pose or something, you can be assertive and you can go in and say, hey, I would like for you to move. Now, again, don't be rude, but you are the expert and no one else is thinking about the wedding video but the wedding videographer. So be assertive. Don't take what you are getting. Move the couple. Do something else. Have them play. Have them move. Have them be a little bit different. That also kind of goes along with the focal lengths and the changing the eye level. If you are standing back because the photographer wants to get a pose a certain distance away, after they get it, say, can I go up? And then go up and do something different. Change the focal length, and then you can communicate and talk about what it is that you would like the couple to do or what you would like to happen in this particular instance. Another thing that a lot of people just take is I'm taking the footage and they're not thinking about the edit. The best shooters shoot for the edit. And what do I mean by that? Think sequencing. And what I mean by sequencing is how can I piece together 3 to 5 different shots so it tells a little mini story. You'll often hear the phrase tight, medium, wide. So tight being getting close, medium is going to be like waist up, and then wide is going to be a full body shot. And then you can say, okay, I'm focusing on the bride's hand on her earring, and then I will go a little bit wider where she's doing that, and then I will do a really wide one where she's standing there looking out the window playing with her earrings again. Okay, there's different things that you can do, but you're like, how can these shots be put together to make my editing life a little bit easier? Before we sign off, I want to remind you to focus on the basics, which are going to be understanding your frame rates, your camera settings, your manual control. Those are some really basic things on your camera. Focus on those first, and then as you get those nailed down, then move on to some of the next ones. I really hope that this episode has been helpful to you, that becoming a better shooter is an important part of what we do, and we want you to excel. We want you to get better. Don't forget to check out our Lux LUT pack over at howtofilmweddings.com/LUTs. That's howtofilmweddings.com/LUTS. Thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, we will see ya.